It's your boy, Mr. Watkins, and today we're going to be looking at the famous English novelist, George Orwell, whose essays and novels are characterised by their lucid prose, awareness of social injustice, opposition to totalitarianism, and support of democratic socialism. In this video I'm going to explore Orwell's biography and the social and historical context that shaped his writing. So giddy up! George Orwell was the pen name of Eric Arthur Blair, who was born in India in 1903. The young Orwell was a member of the upper middle class and experienced British imperialism firsthand, as his father, Richard Blair, worked in the opium department of the Indian Civil Service. Orwell was a middle child, having an older sister, Marjorie, and a younger sister, Avril. The Blair family returned to live in England in 1904, which meant that Orwell had an English education. Orwell won academic scholarships to expensive and prestigious schools in England, culminating in him studying at Eton, where he was briefly taught French by Aldous Huxley, who would later become famous for writing the novel Brave New World. However, it would appear that Orwell neglected his studies at Eton. His family decided that he wouldn't receive the necessary marks to receive a scholarship to a university, so it was decided that he should join the Imperial Police, which was the Indian Police Service. Orwell chose to be posted in Burma, modern-day Myanmar. His posting began in 1924 and ended in 1927, after he contracted dengue fever. The onset of his illness forced him to reappraise his life, and he resigned his post in the police force and returned to England with the goal of becoming a writer. Later he wrote that he felt guilty about his role in the work of empire, and he began to look more closely at his own country and saw that England also had its oppressed. This epiphany was to drive Orwell's exploration of power and privilege, which would permeate his writing. He was able to step outside his own middle-class upbringing to discover for himself the world of poverty and struggle that his life had shielded him from. To achieve this, he lived for several years as a tramp, and his experience of poverty undoubtedly influenced his belief in social democracy. It was Orwell's political beliefs that were the catalyst for him to enlist and fight in the Spanish Civil War. He travelled to Spain in 1936 with his new bride, Eileen O'Shaughnessy. Most significantly to Orwell's writing, his time in Spain exposed him to the complexities of European politics. Orwell fought on the side of the Republican government, which comprised a number of different socialist and communist factions. Orwell was a member of the Workers' Party of Marxist Unification, or POUM. In a campaign of lies and distortion, the communist press accused the POUM and Orwell of collaborating with the fascists. Orwell's experience in Spain of a horrible atmosphere produced by fear, suspicion, hatred, censored newspapers, crammed jails, enormous food queues, and prowling gangs of armed men, provides an atmospheric basis for his most famous novels 1984 and Animal Farm. Orwell and Eileen escaped from Spain. However, despite their absence, they were charged with rabid Trotskyism. These charges reflect the Trotskyist trials, 1936 to 38, that were occurring in the Soviet Union, which Orwell would later satirise in Animal Farm. When World War II started in 1939, Orwell was declared unfit for military service. However, in 1941, he found employment with the BBC's Eastern Service, where he supervised cultural broadcasts to India to counter Nazi propaganda. This work perhaps provided the inspiration for the work of the protagonist of 1984, Winston Smith, inside the Ministry of Truth. During the war, Orwell wrote Animal Farm, which he completed in 1944. However, several publishers refused to publish it, as they were concerned that the novel may affect the wartime alliance between the Soviet Union and England. Animal Farm was eventually published in England in 1945 and in America in 1946. Arguably, Orwell's greatest novel is the dystopian classic 1984, which conveyed the horrors of a totalitarian society. 1984 reflects the politics of Europe through the 30s and 40s, Italian fascism under Mussolini, German Nazism under Hitler, and Russian communism under Stalin, and provides a powerful warning against the dangers of totalitarianism. 2 years after he had finished writing 1984, Orwell died of tuberculosis. So, George Orwell was born in 1903 and he died in 1950, aged 46. He lived through a tumultuous period of world history: English imperialism, World War I, the Russian Revolution, the Great Depression, the Spanish Civil War, and World War II. World War I began in 1914 and finished in 1918. A significant cause of the war was the aggressive foreign policies adopted by England and Germany as they raced to acquire colonies.
And we built up empires. We stole countries. That's what you do. That's how you build an empire. We stole countries with the cunning use of flags. Yeah. You just sail around the world and stick a flag in. I claim India for Britain. And they go, you can't claim us. We live here. 500 million of us. Do you have a flag? We don't need a bloody flag. It's our country, you bastard. No flag, no country. You can't have one. That's the rules that I've just made up. And I'm backing it up with this gun that was lent from the National Rifle Association.
The Great War was to have a profound effect on the social and political landscape of Europe in the 20th century. Perhaps the most influential event was the Russian Revolution in 1917, which marked the rise of communism. Orwell satirised the period of Russian history between 1917 and 1945 in his allegorical novel Animal Farm. After World War I, there was a period of hope and prosperity during the 20s. However, this came crashing down during the Great Depression, which started in 1929 and finished in 1934. It was during this period that Orwell began living as a common man and grew contemptuous of his own privilege. Just before the onset of World War II, Orwell was personally involved in the Spanish Civil War, which started in 1936 and finished in 1939. The war was the clash between the left-wing Republicans, who were backed by the Soviet Union, and the right-wing nationalists, who were backed by the Nazis. During the war, the Communist Party turned on Orwell and gave him an intimate experience of the perils that an individual faced from a totalitarian state. This was an idea that Orwell explored in both Animal Farm and 1984. In World War II, there was a battle of propaganda between the warring nations, which Orwell was involved in. In 1984, Orwell explored the power of language in shaping thinking and warned against the misuse of language. Again, this was an idea that was explored in Animal Farm through the character of Squealer, and in 1984 through the Ministry of Truth, which paradoxically deals in lies. Undoubtedly, the bleak world that Orwell portrays in 1984 was born out of Orwell's life in London during World War II. The various ministries, the austerity, and the regular bombings were all part of his daily life. During the war, the competing totalitarian states in Europe posed a very real threat to freedom, and the dystopian world that Orwell depicted in the novel is a profound warning. Unfortunately, Orwell died shortly after World War II, but what I want to leave you with is a quote from his essay Why I Write. My starting point is always a feeling of partisanship, a sense of injustice. When I sit down to write a book, I do not say to myself, I'm going to produce a work of art. I write because there is some lie that I want to expose, some fact to which I want to draw attention, and my initial concern is to get a hearing. So when you're reading a George Orwell novel, I want you to ask yourself, what is the lie that Orwell is exposing? Or what is the fact that he is trying to draw attention to? And I think that asking those questions is exactly what Orwell wants you to do. So just to recap the important points of the lesson, George Orwell's real name is Eric Arthur Blair. He was born into privilege as a member of the upper class. However, he later rejected this privilege and lived and struggled as a common man. Orwell believed in a socialist democracy where the government makes economic and social interventions to promote social justice. He fought in the Spanish Civil War, where he was demonized by the Communist Party. Orwell wrote two great novels that opposed totalitarianism, Animal Farm and 1984. He lived through two world wars, the Russian Revolution, the Great Depression, and the Spanish Civil War. And that's it. You've made it. If you have enjoyed the video, please click on the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner. A big shout out to the Year 11 class at Hunters Hill High. I hope you guys are still practicing your Kung Fu punctuation moves. And to everyone else, thanks again for watching.